In this video, we are going to cover perspective, which right next to scale is probably the single most important setting that you need to get right in order for the superimposed roofing to look as realistic as possible when we're all finished. The best way to understand perspective, and this is how I try to look at it, is to imagine each section of roofing or each plane as an 11 by 17 sheet of paper. If you put that paper on your desk right in front of you and you stand up over it, looking straight down at it, it will appear just like you would expect it to as a rectangle with 4 right angles. As you sit down in your chair, the closer your eyes get to the height of the desktop and the further away you are will both have an effect on how distorted the view of the rectangular shape gets. The same thing happens with the roof. If we were in a helicopter looking directly down at one of these roof planes, not directly down at the house, but perpendicular to the pitch of the roof, it would appear as a rectangle with 90-degree angles. Of course, the exception is, and this is where it can get a little tricky, is that not every roofing plane will be a rectangle to start out with, because we have things like dormers and valleys that can either obstruct our view or take chunks out of our rectangle, if you will. So we'll go through some examples of this, but the best thing to remember when setting your perspective is to try to think of each section of roofing as a rectangular sheet of paper. So let's start with this example, which is fairly straightforward and an easier photo to set perspective on, and then we'll go on to a few other examples. First, we need to select a roofing surface that we have outlined, and then we have the option to set perspective here at the top. Once we click Set Perspective, we get this box that pops up with 4 anchor points. Now, sometimes the visualizer will take its best guess at identifying the proper perspectives for one of your surfaces like it did here. This doesn't always happen though, and you'll see that we usually get a square here in a second. You can drag and move this shape around or move the anchor points individually so you can reposition, and basically what you want to do is set each corner or anchor point at the 4 corners of your roof surface. And this is why it's helpful to imagine each surface as a sheet of paper, because you don't always have your 4 corners in view. So I'm going to move these into position, and once I'm done, I'll click Apply. Now I'll click on the next surface, click on my Set Perspective button, and as you can see here, we just get a square. So I'll begin moving my anchor points into position. And this is where it might be tempting to do this because it feels like we are just outlining the surface again. Imagining our sheet of paper, though, it wouldn't look like this, but we would have something more along the lines of this. Once I'm satisfied with this, I'll click Apply. Switching over to another example here where I already have the main surface outline, I'll click the Set Perspective button, and I just want to point out that something like this is very easy to get wrong. We have this angle, which kind of mimics this angle over here, so right away you're probably thinking we just need to set this like so. And what will happen here is the visualizer will superimpose the roofing on this angle, and really that is how the surface would look if we were looking at it from the far right side of the house. But we're not. We're looking at it just a little left of center, so really, imagining my sheet of paper here, we have a perspective that's more along the lines of something like this. So just keep in mind that we often have surfaces that are either intersected by another surface, which could be another portion of the roof or even the second story of the house, and the temptation can be to use that line to set your perspective. But always remember to use your imaginary sheet of paper and you'll be fine. Okay, we have one more example we are going to look at here. Now, I've only outlined 4 different sections here just for the purpose of this demo. If I was doing this for a customer, I would certainly be including these other sections as well. So let's get started with our first surface here, and I'm going to move my anchor points into position and just let you kind of see where I would place them without a long explanation of why. Again, imagine each surface as a piece of paper. I will most likely need to come back and adjust these later, which I'll cover in the next video. Moving on to the next surface, this one is going to be a little tricky because we have several lines that want to deceive us here. I'm just going to take my best guess here with something like this, and once I see it, I'll be able to come back and make the necessary adjustments. If it helps, pause the video here and just take some more time to look at this and really try to understand how your sheet of paper would be laying like this in this perspective. ignoring the lines that we have being created by the roof. We have the same deceiving lines in this surface too. I usually like to start with the bottom edge as it gives me the best starting point, if you will, whereas starting with any hips or ridges could completely throw you off. I'm going to set this one like this for now, and I'll come back and tweak it if necessary. Finally, this last surface here is much more straightforward, but we do have this valley here that could throw someone off. So I think the perspective here is along the lines of something like this. And I'm going to move my shape out a bit so I can see these anchor points over here. And we want to bring this bottom point in a little bit. And after a little bit of back and forth tweaking, which I will cover in the next video, we have a finished image with proper perspectives.